Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulullah. Now we're going actually to address the points. And I did call in my previous video, Earth to Sam, come back to our discussion. Now, in the first video, we have shown a few things. We have shown that there's no linkage between Hubal and Allah, and that they have no proof whatsoever, except actually it's on the contrary, that Allah, the Prophet Muhammad, worship is not the same as Allah that the Quraysh worshiping. And when that applies to the Christians and the Jews. But it is the one creator that they should be worshiping, that the Prophet came to clean up the act of these people, to bring them back to the worship, to change their theology back to the pure theology. Now, we have shown that, and thank you very much for actually Keith and Sam have quoted the one in the Sirat Rasul, in the actual Prophet's biography, about the sons of Abdullah, and when he vowed to sacrifice them. We showed the statue of Hubal, what Hubal was used for, who was he praying to, who was he doing the sacrifice to, and that the two were not the same. We're using the same text. Now let's go to the video number 2, and we're going to look at the certain points that are addressed here by Keith and Sam. At 220, Keith is saying, and let's listen to him, that Hubal had 3 daughters.
The daughter goddesses Alat, Aluza, and Almanat. In the satanic verse, they deal with the passages and evidence that affirm that they are the same. It is important to note in passing that the pagan Allah, or Hubal, had 3 daughter goddesses, Alat.
Now, can Keith show us, and we're challenging again, can Keith, Sam, I keep saying Keith, can Sam show us that Hubal had 3 daughters? Can he? And we already know that Allah, they said Allah has 3 daughters. This is in Surah Najm. They already know that. We already know that. But is there anything there to show us that Hubal had 3 daughters? That the actual idol Hubal had 3 daughters? We want to see that. Now, of course, he now recurs to something very interesting. That is the satanic verses, the infamous satanic verses. Let's listen to his assertion for a second, and then we will show what a weak assertion it is.
Aluza and Almanat. In the satanic verses, Muhammad mentions these 3 daughters of Allah as being valid intercessors, but then later recants, claiming Satan deceived him to deliver these verses that were subsequently not put in the Quran. This further shows the connection that his false god has to the pagan god Allah, or Hubal, the father of 3 goddesses. It is interesting that Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from the devil.
Aha, so it's interesting that Muhammad could not tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from Satan. So which one's from God, which one from Satan, Keith? Because you're kind of shooting yourself here in the foot. And this is for the sake of argument. The issue of the satanic verses has been debated, addressed over and over and over and over again. I will post, and Sam will say, well, we've been rebutting these articles from Answering Islam and from Sami Zatra and from everyone. Stop being the judges, guys. Let the people who are watching decide, okay? But I will flip the script a bit. Of course, I don't believe that the incident in the satanic verses happened, for a very, very simple reason, which can be addressed in a whole different debate of the satanic verses. Did it actually happen? It can be a different debate. That can be like debate number 3 if Sam wants to. Okay, so let's now move away from the discussion. But I just want to point a flaw in Sam's argument, and that's very interesting. And this is for the sake of argument. He says that, well, Muhammad could not tell the difference between what God revealed and what Satan revealed. Why would he, if we're going with the argument, why would he recant then and say that was from Satan, that inspiration about the 3 daughters of Allah, that they're high intercessors? If he didn't know the difference, doesn't that just show you actually that he did know the difference, that he realized the difference? Can you imagine? Now, can you bunch the 2 together? Can they both be revelations from Satan? Because by you stating that, that he recanted, and by you stating that he did not know the difference between the two, are you stating that both of them cannot be from Satan? One of them is from Satan, as you're saying, by the argument of the satanic verses, which is the Allat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat, the three intercessors. So then, that the other ones should not be from Satan then? Is that what you're trying to say? Because think about it, he's actually taking that statement back, saying it is from God, from Allah, about Allah, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat, that it's from Satan, and that the Quran is from Allah. If he did not know the difference, why would he recant? Why would he make that statement? This is a very interesting point that you're making here. Let's listen to it again.
I submit it is put in the Quran. This further shows the connection that his false god has to the pagan god Allah, or Hubal, the father of three goddesses. It is interesting that Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from the devil.
Now, imagine, because he's saying it is interesting they could not tell the difference between a revelation from God and one from the devil. So, Keith, this is the second challenge right now. Please come on your next video and tell us which one do you consider from God and which one do you consider from Satan. Because if you are using the historical sources that say that this event did take place, it is quite clear from them which one is from Allah and which one is from Satan. And it is quite clear for the viewers that the issue of Allat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat is the one from Satan, right? So be careful, Keith, because you're shooting yourself in the foot. All right, let's keep going to 305 when it's a very interesting statement again. Keith is getting ahead of himself.
Responds by saying that when the New Testament is translated to Arabic, it calls God Allah. So if the Islamic Allah is Satan, then that means the God of the Bible is Satan for calling him Allah.
Now, that is a quite correct statement because of the usage of the name. And I've just shown you in the response to addressing jibreelk number 2 using red missionary statement saying that Muhammad took the name Allah from the pagans. We're talking about the name Allah. So my logic is very clear. It is very proper in this context because I'm using the name. So if you're saying that the name represents an idol and Muhammad just took that, so therefore he is an idol because of the name. So me applying this name using the Arabic Bible, if you're just saying, well, because it's Allah, because the usage of Allah, therefore it must be a pagan idol or Satan. So I'm just saying, well, hold on a second. So if the Bible in John 3:16 uses the word Allah, therefore and by calling Allah Satan, therefore your Allah should be Satan, just because of the word usage. Go back and review Red Missionary's video again, claiming the usage of the word Allah. Simple as that, very clear. Again, let me make it clear. Red Missionary is using the accusation that Allah is the word Allah, the name Allah is an idol, a Satan, a pre-Islamic pagan thing. Muhammad took that, used the same word, therefore it is the same idol, the same Allah. And I'm just saying, hold on a second, just because he used the word Allah, does that mean that they're the same? That was my whole point. So I'm using it, okay, wait a second, with that kind of logic, if the Bible uses the word Allah, are they referring to Satan? Of course, just by my statements, and you can go and review my videos, I myself am saying no way, because if you'll see my other discussions with Red Missionaries, you will really understand this very easily. All right, now I want to ask Keith, and again, I've said in my video before, Sam, how is this a red herring? How is it a red herring?
It's God from paganism, and that the pagan Allah is actually Satan masquerading as God, unquote.
So Sam's saying, and of course, just because an Arabic translation of the Holy Bible uses the word Allah, it doesn't mean that Christians and Muslims are worshiping the same God. I am challenging Sam, Keith, and anyone else to come up, when did I ever make that assertion that the God of the Muslims is the same as the God of the Christians or the Jews in terms of theology, obviously, that we're worshiping. I said that before, it is the God that the Christians and the Jews and everyone else should be worshiping. that the Prophet Muhammad came to clean up the act of these people. That is the one, the God. Now, I never said the Christians are worshiping the same God. I never said that the Jews are worshiping the same God. I never claimed that the Christians and Muslims are worshiping the same God. Then he goes to say, nor does this disprove that Islam derives its God from paganism and that the pagan Allah is actually Satan masquerading as God. That's again a very, very amazing argument. Now I just showed you already what I meant by this, by the Arabic. But now he flips it and says, well, this does not disprove that Islam derived its God from paganism, that pagan Allah is actually Satan masquerading. This doesn't prove it either, Sam. You need to prove it. And you failed so far by your faulty analogies and your weak arguments that we have disproved in video number 1 and number 2. So we're challenging you again. I'm restating my challenge. Prove to me that I've ever claimed that the Muslim God, that our theology basically is the same as the Christian. I'm claiming that I claim that the Christians and the Muslims is the same God just because of the usage of the word Allah. I never claimed that. I claimed about the word Allah. I have to, and excuse me please, my viewers, that I'm repeating myself so many times. I don't want people to miss the point. I want to reinforce the point of the usage of the word Allah. And I restate again, go and check the words of Red Missionary where this all started from. Now, let's keep going.
The Bible uses the word Allah. This doesn't mean that Christians and Muslims are worshiping the same God.
I agree with you.
Nor does this disprove that Islam derived its God from paganism, and that the pagan Allah is actually Satan masquerading as God.
I disagree with you.
Thus, merely noting that people translate John 3:16 as Allah so loved the world doesn't actually address anything. It is a red herring.
Next, it only addresses what I have said about the word usage Allah and Red Missionary's assertion. This is where it all came to. Now,
distant for us to point out that the Muslims are wrong when they try to make the Islamic Allah the God of the Old Testament prophets, because he says Jews don't accept the Christian belief of the Trinity. He says there is no parallel between the Trinity and the God of the Old Testament. Well, I would challenge this by noting that this is just an assertion and not an argument. In order to affirm that there is no Trinity in the Old Testament, Jibreel would need to tear down all of the evidence already put forth and refute all the articles with...
Can you imagine this guy? Is this guy for real? Look at what kind of a block he's trying to put in your... You have to tear down all the arguments. And I already addressed this point in video number 2. And I'm going to restate it again. That is like saying to a Darwinist that you have to refute every single page, every point in the origin of the species. And that's not the issue, right? I already showed you why you've come to this conclusion, why you're trying to sway the debate into a different direction. I do say let me bring myself and you back to our initial discussion. That is Allah Satan, Hubal, and you have failed to prove that. Let's keep on going. Okay, the next argument is a very interesting argument, and that is about the Asma wa Sifat. And this is part of the Aqidah of Al-Islam, and this is an argument which will turn against Keith and Sam. And let's listen to it for a second and pay attention. This is our point 7.
Jesus is identified as the Son of the Most High. This would seem to violate Tawheed, al-Asma wa Sifat, names and qualities of God, in that when Jesus is called Son of the Most High, it denotes his unique relationship to...
I'm only going to use this point. Basically, Sam is saying, he's quoting some verses from the Quran here, a bunch of verses, and basically saying that the fact that Jesus is called Son of the Most High...
Jesus is identified as the Son of the Most High. This would seem to violate Tawheed, al-Asma wa Sifat.
And you're correct, it is violating Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, and that is the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he does not have a son, nor is he begotten, nor does he beget. Now, he's saying that based on that, there's a proof there that, they're not the same, you know? Jesus is having attributes of God, therefore he is God, and the Islamic Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a son, so it's a different thing, therefore it's Satan. The key word here is different. Keith is using the point of Asma wa Sifat, which is shooting him back in the foot, to show that Allah and Jesus are different, or that Allah and the God of the Christians is different. Basically, that's the assertion. Now, do the Muslims believe that Allah has three daughters, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, Wal-Manat? And a big resounding no. Now, did the Quraysh believe that Allah has three daughters? Big resounding yes. Are the two the same? No. Why? Because the Quraysh believe that Allah had Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, three daughters, violates Al-Tawheed, Al-Asma wa Sifat, which Keith uses to show that there's a difference between Allah and the Trinity, or the God of the Christians. Therefore, by the same logic, Keith is refuting his own argument, because Muhammad ﷺ does not have the same God as the Quraysh, or the Quraysh the same as Muhammad, because the daughters of Allah that the Quraysh held are violating Asma wa Sifat of Tawheed of Al-Islam. So Keith, your argument, your whole debate is done by your own point. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.